Having bad adaptations, or very few that are good and widely recognized by the general public, can do some serious damage to a character's perception. I think Wonder Woman is arguably the most recognizable, slept-on superhero. She's one of the most easily identifiable superheroes on the planet, and you'd have to search long and wide to find someone who's never heard of her. But most people outside the comic space would have a difficult time naming notable things about her, largely because so little of her overall mythos, supporting cast, and rogues gallery have been adapted in major TV shows and films, toppled with the very few dedicated projects she has of her own to begin with. This has led to Diana catching strays left and right from people who like to question her significance as a comic book superhero, due to her lack of depictions compared to heavy hitters like Superman and Batman. So I thought I'd go over some of the worst takes and opinions on Wonder Woman that leave any fan of the character dumbfounded, whether it stems from a place of ignorance, hatred, or just plain rage bait. Likely a combination of the three. The first widely known misconception I'd like to tackle is the sentiment that Wonder Woman doesn't have a rogues gallery because she lacks a no-kill rule and is the type of character who won't hesitate to destroy her enemies. Non-comic readers probably gathered this idea from seeing a couple of comic panels online, as well as taking a liking to adaptations like Injustice.
He could only have gotten that idea from Benjamin Netanyahu. That's it.
This is a weird take because she quite literally does have a rogues gallery, and it's a pretty extensive one at that, but I'll touch more upon that later. More notably, Wonder Woman does not enjoy killing and tries to avoid it at all costs. It's something that's only used as a last resort if there's simply no other choice. If we were to look at the post-crisis era specifically, most of the enemies she quote-unquote killed were monsters or deities that were often from the Greek pantheon. The infamous Maxwell Lord neck snap was the rare occurrence of her actually killing someone who didn't fit that bill. Wonder Woman was fighting for her life against a mind-controlled Superman, and Maxwell Lord, under the influence of the lasso of truth, stated that the only way to stop his control over Superman was to kill him, as he planned to use his antics to kill Superman's loved ones and a bunch of other superheroes. Diana got flack from members of the superhero community like Batman and Superman. It was a very controversial moment both in-universe and among readers of her series at the time. To make matters even worse, Maxwell Lord pulled a Mysterio by broadcasting his own death to make it seem like Wonder Woman killed a civilian in cold blood, causing her to get even more scrutiny from the general public. Diana isn't a punch first, ask questions later type of gal. Her desire for truth and compassion is the linchpin of her personality and motivations as a hero. She's often noted to have a maternal and deeply caring nature, embodying some of the best qualities a person could have. Seeking redemption for enemies shaped by unfortunate circumstances or traumatic experiences is a key component of Wonder Woman's dynamics with other characters. Another strange talking point is the idea that in all of their incarnations, the Amazons are rooted in misandry and are simply a group of man-hating psychopaths whenever they encounter people or things outside of themselves in Themyscira.
It's stupid.
None of it's true.
None of it's true. None of it's true. It's BS. They made it up. They lie.
This narrative was most likely perpetuated by the New 52, one of the many sins of that reboot, which had the infamous retcon of having the Amazons sleep with men 3 times a century, to then kill and drown them once they've served their reproduction purposes, putting any male babies into slavery while the female babies get to live on Themyscira. It's pretty messed up. Or perhaps it comes from yet another comic panel from a book that's generally considered bad and out of character, portraying Diana as having a huge disdain for men in general. This is antithetical to how the Amazons in Paradise Island were established pre and post New 52, with DC going back to their more traditional roots once the Rebirth era kicked into high gear. The Amazons were initially created by the goddesses thousands of years ago to set an example for mankind through their bravery, strength, and compassion, so that mankind could better understand and worship the gods. After Hercules and his men betrayed Hippolyta, killing, torturing, and enslaving the Amazons after deceiving them as allies in their mission of peace, Hippolyta sought help from the goddesses to release them from captivity, but she was ordered by Athena to not seek revenge against Hercules and his men. But the Amazons were filled with rage after being freed, and they killed Hercules' army. The goddesses were disappointed, so they created the island of Themyscira as a penance, forcing the Amazons to guard a great evil. As long as they stayed on that island, they would remain immortal. Years following Diana winning the tournament to become Wonder Woman and venture to the outside world, the Amazons have let several outsiders, including men, onto their island on numerous occasions. They even set up their own embassy not only for diplomatic affairs in the outside world, but also to serve as a portal that travels to and from Themyscira, as a means of representing their progress to truth and openness. They've shared countless resources and knowledge with other nations. Diana created the Wonder Woman Foundation to share the guiding principles of the Amazons and the gods with the rest of the world. This included things like teaching farmers Amazon methods of soil preservation and ecologically damaged areas, building schools in poor rural areas in the Americas and Africa, and teaching women refugees about their reproductive rights. While the Amazons have been skeptical about mankind due to their past experiences, Diana has always viewed the outside world in a more idealistic, hopeful perspective, which would inevitably influence the mentality and growth of the rest of her people. On top of being more open to human affairs, the Amazons have some pretty advanced technology and scientific knowledge. Their unique aesthetic combines technology with Greco-Roman influences. Some were gifts from the Greek goddesses like the magical spheres from Athena, which allowed the women from Themyscira to communicate with one another across great distances through will and consent. They invented a tractor beam and the purple healing ray, which has advanced healing properties and can be used during surgeries. As mentioned earlier, the Themyscira embassy also serves as a portal chamber for travel to and from the island. They have a viewing floor that essentially serves as a holographic projection system for whatever needs to be analyzed, including maps of areas and cities. The most recent incarnation of Wonder Woman's origin, which depicts her first encounter with Steve Trevor and leaving the island with him, has the Amazons repairing Steve's damaged jet and enchanting it with invisibility. To convey Wonder Woman's inconsistencies as a character, many people would point to the quote-unquote countless different versions of her origin in the main DC Comics continuity, suggesting that Wonder Woman being made from clay or being the biological daughter of Zeus means nothing because it's supposedly never consistent. There have definitely been multiple variations of her origin story, some retcons being more consequential than others throughout the decades, but in reality, the idea of Queen Hippolyta wanting a child of her own and molding a human figure from clay or another material that would later be granted life has been a staple of the Wonder Woman mythos since her original publication in 1942. There have been some differences over the years, like if Diana was a statue or a clay figure on the beach. George Perez introduced the idea of the Amazons being reincarnated souls of women who are slain by men, but the foundation of the origin remained unchanged until the New 52 reboot in 2011, almost 70 years after her Golden Age origin was showcased, where Brian Azzarello brought forth the concept of Diana being one of the many children of Zeus. But the most recently established canon reaffirmed that Wonder Woman was molded from clay and brought to life by the goddesses. One of the most highly requested projects among DC fans is an animated series centered on Wonder Woman. It makes sense considering she's never received one over her 85-year history and has only had one live-action TV show back in the late 70s. So saying a Wonder Woman animated series is long overdue would be an understatement. But some people have unironically tried to shut down that idea because she apparently doesn't have enough story or enough villains to warrant a multi-season animated show.
That has got to be the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
The only reason this line of thinking even exists is because she doesn't have many proper outlets of her own to expose her villains to the general public, and flesh them out in a compelling manner. There's a great deal of variety in the adversaries Wonder Woman encounters on a consistent basis, as well as in the distinct ways they challenge her. Barbara Minerva was a British archaeologist interested in Greek mythology, and was a close friend to Wonder Woman. She stumbled upon an ancient plant god that cursed her to transform into the cheetah with supernatural enchantments, forced to feed on innocent flesh in order to survive. There's a contrasting nature to the origins of Cheetah and Wonder Woman, as both were granted gifts from higher powers. The Greek gods granted Wonder Woman life out of love, while Cheetah was punished and made to suffer. She's been nerfed to hell in certain animated depictions, but Cheetah's speed and physical prowess allows her to go toe-to-toe with Wonder Woman. Her strength feats especially are nothing to sneeze at compared to some of the more notable powerhouses. The Greek pantheon offers a whole catalog of foes for Diana to face in a TV show format. Ares, the god of war, is probably the most well-known adversary of hers in that category, but Circe is also another notable villain. In post-crisis, Circe was a powerful sorceress hundreds of years old who was willing to sell her soul to gain power. Circe was approached by the moon goddess Hecate to become the instrument of the goddess's vengeance against the gods who had wronged her, as well as the humanity that worshipped them. In return, she was granted immortality and great power. Over the years, she's proven to be one of Wonder Woman's greatest villains and constantly stands in the way of her mission for peace. Veronica Cale is a wealthy businesswoman who believes she's the embodiment of the American success story and rightfully earned her status, as opposed to what she thinks of Wonder Woman, believing her to be a phony and a liar with her agenda to spread peace and love in man's world. Dr. Psycho is a powerful telepath who can warp other people's realities and make them see environments or people that aren't actually present. Dr. Poison specializes in toxicology and various other poisons. Grail is the daughter of Darkseid and an Amazon, born on the same day as Wonder Woman, and has been a thorn in her side since her comic debut. Giganta is famously known for her ability to grow in size. The list just goes on and on in terms of variety. I also find it funny when people say that her villain roster is lackluster or nothing to write home about, yet they are constantly used in other adaptations that have nothing to do with Wonder Woman or having her as a supporting role. But having Diana face against those foes wouldn't be interesting, right? Pointing out how unpopular her villains are because of how little they're shown in Wonder Woman media is a dumb way to downplay her significance, and is a really bad metric to use when trying to assess the influence or popularity of a character. People be like, oh, I can't even name 5 Wonder Woman villains, as if the general public wouldn't have a difficult time naming 5 Iron Man villains off the top of their head. Do you think the average moviegoer unfamiliar with the source material could name 5 Hulk villains? How many Wolverine specific villains do you think they could name that aren't just generally seen as adversaries to the X-Men? You see why this is a weird point? But there's just no demand for a Wonder Woman animated show. Casual audiences wouldn't even care. If DC can make a 5-season television series on Harley Quinn with a spin-off set in the same universe centered on Kite Man, as well as separate animated shows on The Creature Commandos, Starfire, Mr. Miracle, and a show on Jessica Cruz Green Lantern set in the same universe as My Adventures with Superman, just to name a handful, it is nowhere near unreasonable to have one on Wonder Woman, someone who has significantly more lore and source material to draw from for potential seasonal storylines, considering her 80+ year publication history. The characters I just listed don't even have a supporting cast on par with the Amazons or the Wonder Girls. Are we just gonna ignore how the first ever live action Wonder Woman movie earned over $820 million in the worldwide box office, becoming the 3rd highest grossing DCEU movie behind only Batman vs Superman and Aquaman? When it comes to the domestic box office, it was actually the highest grossing film in that universe, and this was after BVS and Suicide Squad were negatively received by critics and audiences. The Wonder Woman animated movie that was released in 2009 to this day remains the 4th best-selling direct-to-home DVD DC animated film. As recently as 2025, Privacy Journal looked at Google Trends search data over the course of 12 months, comparing searches for well-known female superheroes from Marvel and DC. Unsurprisingly, Wonder Woman was the most popular superheroine in 31 out of 50 states in the US. What separates her from the rest of the pack was how she was the first to not debut as a supporting character. No other superheroine can carry their own franchise to the same degree as Wonder Woman, and it's impressive how much notoriety she still maintains despite the character's relative lack of appearances, having no video game, no TV show since the 70s, and no cartoon, especially compared to female heroes who have had far more screen time in major blockbuster films. The whole superhero Mount Rushmore debate that gets brought up like every other month is probably the biggest point of contention in regards to people trying to measure Wonder Woman's significance in the comic space. Some might argue that there are several other characters more deserving of that 4th spot. The biggest issue with this conversation is that most people view it as their personal top 4 favorite heroes, or something that is strictly a popularity contest, rather than focusing on historical significance. If you prefer characters like Captain America, Hulk, Wolverine, or whoever, I mean, that's fine. It's a subjective topic and you can't debunk someone for having a preference for superheroes. There definitely is a strong case to be made about those characters being more favorable amongst the general public, or having more modern mainstream popularity because of the success of the MCU and other popular franchises. But I think there is a more definitive answer if you were to apply the logic behind the actual real-life Mount Rushmore with the 4 US presidents to superheroes. They weren't selected because they were the most popular, rather the sculptor believed they best represented major events that shaped the country or key moments in US history. Wonder Woman has more historical significance in terms of actually having an impact on the creation and trends of comic book superheroes. The creations of the other contenders didn't define as much of a shift in the comic space. Her creation challenged how women could be depicted in comic books, inspiring future writers and artists to create stories about powerful heroines. Wonder Woman's success in the 1940s was seen as an anomaly because women in comic books were often given abilities that were weaker than their male contemporaries, or given positions of lesser significance. Her creator William Moulton Marston wanted her strength to rival Superman's, but also embody an ideal level of femininity and beauty. Marston designed her as a means of advocating for the increased participation of women around World War II. Women were taking on more industrial and factory jobs while the men fought off in the war. He wanted more people to value their feminine contributions to the world. Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman are the only 3 characters to have no breaks in their publication since the debut of their own titles, as each of their books have always been in print. Wonder Woman is the 3rd longest running comic book in history, only behind The World's Finest. The first issue of her series in 1942 was the first DC comic to feature a female as the title character. A lot of comics back then were anthologies featuring multiple characters and stories. Not often did an ongoing comic focus solely on a single character, unless they were as big as Batman or Superman. Her comic highlighted the importance of sisterhood, since many female characters worked alone or in conjunction with a more established male hero. In the Wonder Woman books, the women would work together to look out for one another, as opposed to falling victim to jealousy and pettiness. In 1972, Wonder Woman was used on the cover of the debut issue of America's first national feminist magazine, named Miss Magazine, which was also used to spearhead a campaign to return the character back to her roots, as at the time DC took away her powers and took her series in a weird direction. She essentially became the mascot mascot of the women's movement at the time, being used for other publications that focused on women's rights. The success of the Linda Carter show also had a major influence, inspiring shows with female heroes like Charlie's Angels and the Bionic Woman. I've seen people try to downplay her being on the Mount Rushmore by saying people only consider her because she's a woman or one of the first female superheroes. Gee, I wonder why a character who's the most prominent in breaking barriers and how 50% of the population can be represented as superheroes is such a big deal. Let me give an example just to show how moronic of a take this is. While not the first black superhero to ever exist, Stan Lee incorporated Black Panther in Fantastic Four issue 52, as there weren't really a lot of prominent black superheroes at the time, making T'Challa the first black superhero in mainstream American comics specifically. But imagine a group of people trying to downplay his significance as a Marvel character by saying, "Oh, you guys only think he's important because he's black."
Y'all claim?
While this obviously wouldn't cover every single bad take on the character imaginable, I think this covers the gist of some of the most common of the bunch. It's fine not to be super knowledgeable on a franchise or individual character. It's not like most of us are PhD level experts on the subject matter, but it is mind-boggling how confident some people are with these takes without doing their due diligence and basic research before spewing nonsense. It's one thing if you're not really fond of or don't care for a specific hero, but it's a whole other can of worms to be completely disingenuous or make stuff up entirely, which is why consistent, good adaptations of comic book characters are important, because not only does it have an impact on how they're perceived by average people, but potential successes also has a ripple effect of them being featured more in the comics themselves, more movies, video games, etc., which is the treatment I hope will be given to Wonder Woman in the foreseeable future.